Hiya, this is Las Watkins. Just want to do an impromptu tripping in films interview. Just because if you ever read my book, Smile with My Mouth to the Ocean, the last section is probably the best thing about the whole book. It's not the actual story, but it's all about tripping in films, which I've been researching for years. I've also got a tripping in TV section and recommended tripping stuff, but I'll just focus on the film stuff for now because I can show like little excerpts. I'm not going to show the whole scenes because that would take too long, but let me start off. So the introduction for that was, since movies are my expertise, I thought I could recommend some tripped out shit. My whole life I would make lists of various things, and this is one of them. Most are famous, so if you haven't seen them, check them out, okay? Right, let's start with Blu-ray. This is also known as Renegade, directed by Jan Koonen. He's a French sort of Dutch filmmaker, and that came out 2004. And he had a massive success in France, and he went to America to do a Western, because they probably gave him quite a bit of money, and he made it about tripping. He actually researched with shamans tripping for a year in South America. The film flopped, but the best tripping scene I've ever, that's my number one. And I'll just read out the description I put. In my top 3 choices, this is a terrible Western film. It flopped, by the way, yet has the most amazing visual depiction of tripping ever in a film. Skip to the last third of the movie, and Vincent Cassel and Michael Manson take a spiritual concoction of mescaline made by a sacred remedy of the local Native Americans in their sacred hallucinogenic vine trip in the South American Amazon. But it's actually in Mexico, and it's a peyote, but it's a DMT trip. So if you ever see it, or you will now, you'll understand what I mean. Anyway, so in the trip, Vincent Cassel, the lead actor from Doberman and Irreversible, even in Westworld now, season 3, he basically goes to a subconscious place where there's animal spirits that rule the world, and that's what the DMT ayahuasca trip is. You learn about your spirit animal, and then it teaches you or guides you, or, you know, goes against you depending who you are. Like, went against my brother because he took too much and he didn't respect the nature of the drug. So the CG Fest is a literal translation to light, which is good, versus dark, evil, played by Michael Madsen. Obviously the stereotype go-to guy, right? Despite the rest of the film, this is truly one of the most important Blu-ray DVDs I own. Now, I would watch the clip on YouTube, and then I'd rewatch on basically my Blu-ray. I bought a French Blu-ray or Italian Blu-ray, just had the tripping scene in Blu-ray, but it's the same version, so don't worry about wasting money and buying it just to see it. Just go to YouTube, just watch it. You can see the clip here wherever I put it. Alright, now number 2, okay? Enter the Void by Gaspar Noé. This came out 2010, so he's a director of Irreversible. He also did a semi-porn film called Love, but this is my favorite that he's ever done. I really think this is a masterpiece in tripping filmmaking, okay? So I'll put it down as my favorite tripping film of all time. This tells the story of American siblings living in Tokyo, Japan. While he is reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Oscar smokes DMT, which has totally accurate visuals and sound effects for the tripping universe. Director Gaspar Noé, Irreversible, must have tripped before since his style in the film. He shows us the story with 3 different camera angles throughout to provide a journey with or without drugs. So there's not really much of a twist, I mean maybe towards the end, but the twist more is the fact that each time the character dies, ooh, spoiler, we see a different perspective. So we see kind of over his shoulder, we see his POV, and then I think in the end we kind of see it on him. Alright, but that's definitely worth a watch, alright? It's a fantastic visual film. The girl, the sister, you've just fallen in love with her. There's not much of a story, but you know, it's DMT. Anyways, number 3, A Field in England, directed by Ben Wheatley. So I don't know if you know Ben Wheatley, but he did Kill List and a few well-respected sort of independent low-budget films, including Sightseers, which was my personal favorite that he did. But this film came out in 2013. It was an experimental black and white film. It was a period thing, it was like medieval. But yeah, I'll just read out what I wrote at the time. I didn't enjoy this black and white experimental period film at first, having liked the director's previous film Sightseers a lot more. I was pleasantly surprised by one of the best edited scenes in film tripping history. Very reminiscent of Easy Rider's use of cuts and repeating sound effects. It is a mini masterpiece in editing alone. It's definitely worth a watch. If you know the scene I'm talking about in Easy Rider, it rivals that, but it's in black and white, and it's done, you know, more modern opposed to the 70s editing. Anyway, let's move on to number 4. That's Beavis and Butthead Do America. Now that came out in '96, directed by Judge, obviously, who created and, you know, wrote all the Beavis and Buttheads, the films and the shows, and had massive success from them. But I'll read what I wrote. The scene to look out for is when the dynamic duo are out in the desert dehydrating their nuts off, probably going to die. Beavis takes a bite out of a peyote mescaline plant, a real mescaline plant, you know, not the ayahuasca trip from, you know, the previous ones. Hardcore Bad Trip for any normal average person is a cool for Beavis, a cartoon music video designed and performed by White Zombie, who is Rob Zombie, who directs horror movies now. He's on vocals in particular. So the last portion, as he comes down, has one of the insane landscapes roll back into place, and you really see the roll as he comes down. I mean, it's definitely trippy material there. They knew what he was doing. This description is quite accurate, however not as fast, even though through time a distorted trip will be a lot more stretched out. So obviously it's like a quick music video just for a few minutes, but it's a great cartoon. That's the highlight for me, obviously, because of that scene. But it's spot on. He goes down to hell, I think, and he's like tripping with the devil and I don't know, all this stuff, but with the Rob Zombie sort of soundtrack and nuts. Now, let's get to one of my favorites of all time, number 5, which is Altered States. Came out in 1980, the same year I was born, directed by Ken Russell. Now, usually I don't like his films, they're a bit weird, like weird kinky and demonic and stuff like that. I don't get it. But this one was perfect. You know, it's all about a guy who's a scientist and he learns to trip like in a flotation tank, and then they're tripping for real and they go back in time and time again. They actually alter timelines. It's mad. It's really head fuck. In the end, it's like super trippy. Anyway, a classic film not only for revolutionary special effects for its time, but also for William Hurt's transition through time itself, with the help of a potent mix of drugs, peyote, mushies, and LSD. He's affected mentally but physically also. At the end of his, like the trip or the film really, his wife touches him and trips as well. A must see. Now that is my review, okay? So if you ever want a film from the 80s, talk about tripping, this is your cup of tea, alright? Trust me, alright? William Hurt is great. So let's move on to number 6. I'm running out of fingers. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, directed by Terry Gilliam. Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro bring Hunter S. Thompson's semi-road trip movie through Las Vegas to life. One of the best tripping moments is when they first arrive in the hotel reception and Depp is already tripping. He's already taken like some mescaline or something before he came in. As he sees a man on the telephone, the ground, flowery carpet grows into the man's leg. Short, effective, and very enlightening. It is honestly the best bit. All the stuff with the crocodiles and floating like room, I don't really get it, but the tripping bit, oh man, that was like awesome. Like you see the carpet sort of morph, which is real, you know, it really happens like that. Anyway. Okay, number 7, still running on fingers. Directed by Dennis Hopper in 1969, the classic of all classics, Easy Rider. So with a production quality looking like a well-made student film, Hopper relied on no budget, but with a great film outcome. He made a film that defined the generation. Many say, and they are right, whenever someone mentions 60s or 70s films, Easy Rider will pop up guaranteed. Choppy editing, leaves stuff out, but is perfect for the tripping in the graveyard scene. One of the prosies has a bad one, but gets naked anyway. The Mardi Gras spirit weirded out the viewer. The sound effects enhance the repetitious trip, which can occur in real trips. Brain lapses, if you will. See my bad trip for the loops, okay? So that happened to me, a bit of a loop. And there is a looping cycle to it, but the editing is flawless. I mean, in the 70s, they were doing that on Steambeck, so that's literally the kind on the film, chopping the film. This isn't like clicky like you do nowadays. Okay, so the fact that they did this was monumental, and I love it, and it's great. I think I might even trip to it once. But anyways, number 8, The Doors, 91, directed by Oliver Stone. So Oliver Stone was a big hero of mine. He was my favorite director for many years, until like 90s, noughties, and then he started like, Anyways, 80s, 90s, that was his peak. So his depiction of Jim Morrison, Val Kilmer, who is very method and diva for it, his performance makes him totally believable as a rock god. Drugs did kill him, but you can see his fascination with them, especially the spiritual side at the beginning. In the desert when he trips with his band for the first time, he takes a stroll and ends up in a cave with a Native American spirit who shows him his own death. So this is a precursor for what happens at the end of the film, where he basically was preordained to die. He knew it, and he knew he would die young, but it was in the trip, you know. Whether or not that really happened, who knows, but it's in the film, and I know what Oliver Stone was saying there, and I love the Native American connection, because obviously, you know, Val Kilmer and probably Jim Morrison had like some Indian in him. Anyways, let's move on to number 9, another Oliver Stone film, and this is probably my favorite Oliver Stone film, potentially of all time. It was like, I was obsessed with it for a few years, and that's Natural Born Killers in 94. So, again in the desert, Mickey, Woody Harrelson, and Mallory, Juliette Lewis, get paranoid when a cop tails them. That's based on a true story of Oliver Stone and his producer, Jane Hampshire. So in the special features, you can see how director and producer have a similar trip that inspired the scene. Just taking shrooms, they drive off the main road and end up lost until they find another Native American Indian. Together with brief cuts and rotting fruit back projections, rear projections, those are known, we follow the uneasy scene. Mickey has nightmares and shoots the holy man, the Native American again, killing him in the process, also revealing that they are demons, by the way, in case you didn't know. So yeah, that's a pretty crazy trip. It's not very long, but there's one bit where he rubs his face and it kind of goes all morphy. That was some cool CG for the time. Anyway, let's move on to number 10, which is The Bear from 1988, directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud. Okay, this is the film I saw as a kid, and it's a classic in animal films, if you will. It's not a documentary, it's actually got a story, and there's an actor, French one, Chicky Cario, who is very famous. He was in Doberman and lots of like French films. He was one of my favorite French actors for a while, and he plays like a sort of hunter who is redeemed or something throughout the story. So anyway, let's go to the film with few humans, mainly focusing on the life of one bear cub and his adventures into adulthood. His journey begins with eating some magic mushies and having a bad trip, mainly of giant frogs jumping and croaking everywhere. They look a little fake, but it's the point that counts. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's 80s, you know, come on, I mean, but tripping in an animal movie, like, you'd never even think of that, but that's the French for you, they're bloody weirdos, but I love them, you know, sometimes they do get it right. Anyways, let's move on.